Welcome to the Handshaw's Horizon podcast, where we explore learning science and all the tools you need to create a high-performance learning environment. During this podcast, we're going to dive into a day in the life of an instructional designer. And we have an amazing guest today, our first guest within the podcast, and that is Miss Kenna Miller. Kenna Miller. She is a senior instructional designer for Los Angeles Pacific University, has an undergraduate degree in human resources, and her graduate degree is the amazing MBA, Master of Business Administration. And she currently works at Los Angeles Pacific, where she is a senior instructional designer and leads a team of instructional designers. So welcome, Kenna. So Kenna, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being the first guest on the podcast. So how are you?
I'm good, George. Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be the first guest here. And I'm really excited for our chat today.
Oh, that's awesome. So you have a background in human resources and an MBA, which is a big deal. And you are currently working as a senior instructional designer at LAPU. And that's kind of cool because it kind of shows that designers we come from a lot of different backgrounds, there is no one path that is the best. We come from many of them. So kind of let's go back a few years. How did you even get started? How did you even start thinking about an instructional designer? Did you know about it before you started working at LAPU?
Oh, actually, I'd never heard of the instructional design field, or even I had never met anybody who worked in that field or had the position of instructional designer. So it was all new to me when I started here at LAPU. And originally, as you know, I came onto the team as a course developer. So I worked more on the tech side, and I built courses in our LMS, which was fun, and I definitely gained a lot from it. But I feel like I'm more of a creative person, and I wanted to do more on the course development side rather than just build the courses from the technical side, especially because a lot of my background in HR was in training and development and management and all of those lovely things that go along with business. So I saw every course that I looked at, I saw opportunities of ways that I could make it better, or just, my creativity ran wild looking at them. So I'd say about maybe 5 months into that position, an ID role came up, and I had that I was a little nervous when I asked you, but I had that conversation with you to see if it would be possible for me to transition into that role. And about 3 years later, here we are.
You know, uh, that kind of leads us into another question because um, attributes of an instructional designer, because Kenna, for those that don't know, she is highly motivated and she goes for the brass ring, as they say, and she continually strives to grow and just do some amazing things within this space. So without even experience, she came up and requested that open position, which that talks directly to attributes. One attribute you want as an idea is somebody who has the nerve, the guts. What can we call it? There's probably a lot of other better terms than that, to just to go for it and to be that person that's leading the way. So, what are some other attributes you think that make a good designer in general?
I definitely think creativity plays a lot into it, and I like where you're going with guts. I think that there's finding a good balance of trying new things and implementing new things that may have possibly not been done before is definitely a good trait to have, because it's really easy to get stuck in what we've always been doing. And I know you have a great story about grandma's ham on that one. We don't want to be stuck in the past or doing something just because that's the way it's always been done. And I think it provides a much better student experience if we're able to try new things and offer them new ways to look at things, especially assignments and course activities.
Good. The top attribute of a designer. I like that. We're gonna go with that one. We're gonna run with that one because
Okay.
it does, right? Because it takes to be vulnerable like that, to try something new. And, we do our best, but things can still fall very short of expectation. But to have the guts to go out and try it, that's just awesome, because that's the only way we're gonna grow our field. And we love to grow our field. And then
Yeah,
there is grandma's ham. For those that haven't heard the story, can I tell the story? The grandma's ham
absolutely.
story.
Please do.
I love some of grandma's ham. All right, so I was actually in the Air Force in the NCO Academy, or not the NCO Academy, the one right below. I forget the name of it. But I was a buck sergeant, as they called us. And the story was, you don't always want to just rely on what's happened. So they tell everybody the story about grandma's ham, and it was a holiday, and there was a husband, wife, family, and they were all together. And then for years, the wife always cooked the holiday meals, which were amazing, and she'd cut the end of the ham off. She would just chop the end of the ham and then throw it in a frying pan. And finally, the guy asked, he said, "How come you always cut the end of the ham off?" He said, "That's because that's the way my mom always did it. Uh, she would always just cut it off and put it in the pan." So, oh, okay. Then her mom came over, and then her mom said, "No, you know what? My mom, so the grandmother now used to always chop it off, put it in the frying pan." And then when the grandmother came over, he asked, says, "How come we always chop that off?" And she said, "Oh, you know why? Because we didn't have a pan that would fit the ham, and I couldn't afford to buy one, so I had to cut it in order for the ham to fit on the pan." So you don't always want to follow the status quo, because it could be there for a reason that has nothing to do with anything. So I just always thought that was a fun story from back in the day, a long time ago.
Definitely. I keep that story in the back of my mind and just, try to remember we don't want to eat grandma's ham. We don't want to do things that are just tired. And of course, there are situations where certain things are necessary, but we do want to try to bring in new and creative things for students.
With some of the tried and true stuff. But if we stay in that space and don't venture out and bring it, it's never gonna, they're gonna get bored quick, right?
Exactly.
So you have an amazing ability to build relationships with all the different stakeholders, like the subject matter experts, the SMEs, the different stakeholders, deans, everybody, the folks we work with in HR and everybody. You have this amazing ability to lift everybody up, make an amazing product, and build a relationship at the same time. So, what's the importance of building relationships within instructional design?
I think that might actually be the top skill over guts now that we
Good
get to
point.
it. Um, I think the role of the instructional designer can take many shapes just depending on the project itself. But a lot of the work that we do here, it's a very it's like a facilitator role, it's a project management role, it's making sure everybody's doing the right thing in the right place at the right time. So there's a lot that goes into it. And of course, that will be different in every situation, but it really does help if you do have those strong relationships with your stakeholders. And at least in my experience, I think it's the biggest thing is communication, and then really putting your best efforts to build that trust, especially because your subject matter experts are new in almost every course. So you may have not worked with them in the past, but it's really getting them to trust you and getting them to um, really communicate with you in an open and honest way as well. I think active listening is definitely another important skill from that perspective, and just hearing them out and collaborating to the best of your ability.
That is so cool. So you wear a ton of different hats, as you didn't allude to. You stated a lot of the different hats: project manager, ID, relationship builder, sometimes even subject matter expert if it's within your field. You're bouncing
Mhm.
ideas and stuff. How do you balance all of that and not? Is it possible to overstep maybe, or how is that balanced?
Yeah, of course you can overstep. But I think a lot of it is with time, you gain experience and kind of understand how it works. Something that one of our colleagues, Trey, says a lot is that it's a dance between you and the SME and the AD as well. And just, I I guess a good way to put it is becoming aware of the needs of all of the stakeholders and then doing your best to meet or exceed those needs to make it the best experience for students. So, from our perspective, we're managing all of the things we need to do for LAPU, all of our standards, but also working with the SME and the AD to make it a really just engaging, amazing, creative experience for students and a great learning environment as well. So it's taking it all in and forming it, massaging it, and then hopefully get a good end product at the end.
Because I love to say, uh, culture eats content for lunch. Since I forget who said culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's always on top of my mind
Peter
too. But
Drucker.
thank you, Peter Drucker. Thank you. Um, so I like to say, uh, culture eats content for lunch, and that's that environment, that learning environment that you're talking about. If we're able to create that learning environment, um, learners just going to absolutely um, crush the whole process that they're going through. So that's kind of cool that you brought that up, because that's a big deal. Um, because if we don't build that right environment, no matter how good the content is that we create, it's just going to bounce off. Might be good enough
Yeah,
to pass the class, but they're not going to hold on to it. It's not going to be sticky learning, as we like to say. Yeah, that's very
exactly.
cool. And I love the way you mentioned Trey, and the way she says it's a dance with the
Mhm.
SME, because if we think about stuff as like a fight, a battle, or a fight. No, that's not it. It's a dance, because nobody's trying to win. We're trying to make something that's kind of cool, that's kind of beautiful, it's kind of awesome, all at the same time. So it is more of a dance. I love that analogy
Mhm.
that you brought there. That's cool, because if we're turning into a wrestling match, we don't get amazing stuff. We get a wrestling match, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's not how you want it to go in most instances, I'm sure.
Right? We don't want to wrestle. We want to dance. And like
Mhm.
there's an old country, not fairly new country song that says sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. And that's kind of us in the ID field, right?
Mhm. Definitely. It's finding that balance and just going with the well, this kind of puts us on another topic, but every single course, every single project is so different. So that is one of the more refreshing things I think as an ID is you're never working on the same thing. And especially if you do have that motivation to try to make it a creative and different experience for students where you try new things, that does give you a lot of freedom depending on who you're working with on the project as well.
So cool. Let's follow that thought that you kind of brought up. So what would a typical day look like, or is there a typical day in the life of an ID, in the life of Kenna Miller, MBA and senior instructional designer?
The trick question. No, there is not a typical day. And like I mentioned, I think that that is what keeps it very refreshing. Every course project is different, and I know you know that we work on a lot of things also in addition to our courses, so that I think keeps it fresh and really it keeps I think it keeps me fresh. It keeps my creative juices flowing, and then being involved in so many things, I'm able to you know, change things, adjust things, pull things together that may not necessarily meet up, but there are ways that we can connect them. And I think it also gives us the opportunity to work with different teams and different stakeholders and kind of expand our hats, I guess, or just expand our reach and try to make greater influence across the university. So for that, I think it's awesome. And every single day is different. So never get bored. And
I love how
like
you
you, oh, sorry.
go for it. Sorry.
Like you told me when I first got this job, there's always more work. I think that's something too from an ID perspective, you're never done. That's something for sure that I have had to kind of learn and just get used to. But there's always something else that you can do. And once you develop your skill set, since they're so broad, you can lend your talents and your skills to different projects that you may not necessarily work on under your specific job tasks. So I think that that is a really cool aspect of being an ID as well.
Growing, keep getting bigger, doesn't it? To kind of
Mhm.
grow. And really, if you don't know how to balance, uh, you can mentally take that work home with you, and you don't want to do that because there's, like you said, there's always something to do. So you have to be able to just let it go, let it go, just let it go. I'm off. I'm letting it go, and that's hard to do. Do you ever have issues with that?
Um, I wouldn't say that I have issues with like taking work home to where I would do it in off hours, but I'm always thinking about different things. Ideas will strike me and I'll have to write it down. Oh, when I get back to work on Monday, I'm going to check this out or try this. So, um, I think that comes with an ID mind, though. You're always looking for inspiration and you always find inspiration in different things.
It's funny you say that because on my desk, can you see that?
Dad's creativity journal.
Jazz create this was my favorite Christmas present ever
Oh,
from my son. Jacob gave it to me, and he made this dad's creativity journal, so I always keep it close for those ideas when they just boom, they just come up. And then he put his picture in a little saying down here. He says, what did he say? Oh, from Einstein, imagination is where imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination uh Oh, I can't read it anymore. Oh, imagination encircles the world. Albert Einstein. So I love that. Yeah. So I always keep, and it was close. I didn't mean to bring that up today, but perfect fit. That's cool.
yeah, I definitely have that too. And usually those notes are when I Slack you, hey, George, do you have a second to chat? I have an idea.
I love an idea. I love a good idea. I love an idea. It doesn't even have to be a good one. Because that's kind of right as an idea, you have to start with an idea. And it may
Mhm.
not even be a good one yet. But once you start talking it through and others on the team start speaking into it, that idea that seemed like, it's, yeah, it's an idea, but it can grow. It can
Definitely.
become the mighty oak within the design industry. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
Yes, definitely. And that's something I really appreciate about our team. We're always willing to brainstorm and at least try things. And if they fail, that's okay. We tried it. We'll learn from it and try something new. But um, I do definitely agree. It starts with an idea, starts with a what if we try, or whatever comes up. I think that's a good starting ground.
Let's look at the possibilities. What are the possibilities?
Hmm.
Because we don't know,
Exactly.
you know, and that is so cool. And then all of a sudden, somebody just comes up with something that just makes you kind of stop and go,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, okay." I never thought of. I've been doing this for 4,100 years. I never thought of that. Yeah, that's why it's off. So we have to have a work environment that is as conducive to eating strategies, lunch, as we do as we make the learning environment as well. Kind of hugely important. So how do you then? Because you work with a lot of subject matter expert, a lot of SMEs,
Yeah.
and you said your number one priority, and probably even above guts, is that relationship building. So how
Mhm.
do you go about building that relationship with the SMEs? Because you have to break the ice pretty quick because you're diving into some pretty heavy content a lot of the time. So you want to, and you don't want it just to be they just blah, give you all the content and you go in and shape it. It's you want to enter into that dance. So how do you build that relationship so you can enter into that dance with the SMEs? I imagine you got to build trust. You got to do all sorts of things. What's the Kenna
Yeah.
info on that one?
are a couple of things that I do. I usually start off the meetings by asking them for their opinion on the content and what they anticipate. And I kind of just give them the space to talk out loud and brainstorm. And sometimes that space and allowing them to speak freely about their ideas actually helps us in the course design process and come to new realizations even. So I think that that's important. And also, I really, really try to communicate the best that I can about not only expectations and just make it clear exactly the roles of everyone and what everyone is expected to do. But also, I make it a point to check in very periodically as we're going through the design process, as we're going through the documents, and just make sure that they're not becoming overwhelmed and they're feeling okay and that they understand what they're supposed to be doing and all of those things. Because a lot of the at least in our case, a lot of the content does come directly from the SME, and it can be difficult to, I guess, balance what we need from them in the time period that we have as well. So I like to do those periodic check-ins just to make sure that they, that they're understanding, that they're feeling comfortable and confident and not just dreading the whole course or anything like that. It's definitely more about making sure that they are good to go before I think the relationship is more important than a deadline or something like that. So definitely those things. And then also I think offline communication is a big thing too. I try to contact them the day of our meeting and then at least once before our next meeting. And usually we meet weekly. So just to check in and make sure that they're understanding everything too. And I think that that helps. I know sometimes it can be intimidating to talk to SMEs, but I think the extra nudges and just the extra check-ins also are beneficial because not only does it help the design process and it helps everybody be on the same page throughout the whole thing. But I really do think it helps build that relationship as well, just the constant communication.
That's so cool. 'Cause I think it was Lencioni that said that nobody ever quit due to over communication, right? Things don't get confusing when there's not enough of that's happening. That's cool how you do that. And then when you work with a SME, they're coming in with a lot of credentials, right? They're the subject matter experts, so they've been around the block in whatever
For
the
sure.
topic is. So at the same time, you have to elevate yourself as a partner so you're on the same stratosphere, platform, whatever you want to call it, level. But you also have to give them that space that you talked about to just kind of talk through things. And sometimes I noticed I've been fortunate enough to be a SME a couple times in a few places. And when I have that space to say dumb things don't really make sense. A lot of fruit comes from that because that's just really the start. So by you kind of giving that space and making it there and being curious instead of judgmental on it, that's a big deal. That helps things
Yeah,
really.
I definitely think so. Another thing too that's important, going along with the offline communication, I ask questions in the document, I ask for clarification, and I think a lot of times those questions really do help move the course in a creative direction or even a new direction that makes it a better experience for students. And, it all really goes back to that dance analogy. Like you said, we're not fighting. It's not necessarily that one person is leading and the other's following, but it's that we're moving together in whatever direction the course needs to go in. So I think all of those things add up to it. And of course, there are more nuances and sometimes there are more stakeholders that you have to be aware of as well, which can be challenging. But I think that those are my key takeaways just to getting to the first step of building that relationship.
That's cool. So do you have a favorite aha moment story when you saw SME, when you just saw the light bulb turn on as far as creativity or something like that? Do you have a story that you can share with us about that?
Sure, yes. I was actually working on it was an introduction to biology course that we just redesigned not too long ago. And the SME came in. Um, she actually had a lot of concerns about AI, which was interesting because that during this time period, this was when we were trying to kind of when Chat GPT just came out publicly and we were considering how we could put it into courses. And she was very concerned that students would use it to cheat or not use it ethically. And through the process, she proposed an assignment, and it was a very kind of just a rudimentary assignment where students would write the term and definition for different key terms for each chapter. And in our discussions, she we didn't really consider AI at that point at all, but we made the comment that, you know, AI could easily do this for a student. So even something along those lines where you're trying to be more creative by not assigning a paper or something like that, AI could easily achieve that. And we actually put the assignment into Chat GPT and it gave us all the answers in just a few seconds. So I think that was an aha moment of, okay, I it was a shift definitely in the course design of how creative we wanted to be, because AI can't achieve certain levels of creativity to the extent that would be appropriate for, you know, a college course. And after that, we were actually able to transition that assignment into an infographic instead. So that was a big win. But I think sometimes SMEs just need to see the possibilities that are out there as well. And another way that we've done that is, in addition to that, is just sharing our IM gallery as well, just showing off. You know, we have the capabilities and the skill set on our team, our wonderful design team, to make these really interactive and really engaging items. And I think by seeing it, then that sparks a lot more creativity from SMEs as well. But without seeing it, sometimes I think there's like a little bit of a disconnect of what's too much, what would be too big of a lift to try to include and things like that. So, but you know, I definitely think it's a dance there too, just trying to get everybody on the same page and a little more comfortable with creativity and different ways of submitting assignments and activities. So
Come in at a different place. Yeah, that's a critical point because we all come in with it from a different place or position of comfort level with different things.
mm,
That's a great point. And then as the ID, you really have to kind of be able to identify that where they're coming in from and then work from there, right?
oh, definitely. And it's funny you bring that up. We were just having a conversation about that in one of my other course design meetings yesterday. Um, it's funny that the SMEs are all at different levels of comfort with not only AI, but creativity, creative assignments, all those types of things, but students are as well. And, you know, by assigning some assignment to look at different AI tools or an assignment where they're required to submit something creative like a video or an infographic or something like that, they're all at different comfort levels as well. And something that we might think may be fun and creative, a student may not, and it might actually become a barrier to them completing the assignment. So, in our conversation, that's, of course, we went on a few rabbit trails, but that's also where we discussed multiple ways to show mastery as well. So I think that can be a really good tool to have in your back pocket as an ID, especially if you're going into it with the mindset of assessing content over form. Just offering a few different ways for students to show that they've mastered a concept, I think can be really empowering.
That is awesome. So how then if we're looking at the barriers, so not only for the getting the SME comfortable, but then we have to kind of look forward at the student as well, huh?
Definitely.
And then that, so you have to have a lot of empathy, where you put yourself in somebody else's shoes to be that designer. Never really kind of made that connection. But yeah, so how do you develop empathy, I guess, for that? Is it just something you do, or did you develop yours?
Yeah, I definitely think it develops over time, and at least in my time as being an ID, I think I've gained more confidence approaching those conversations of let's adjust this to be more creative, or let's try to do multiple ways to show mastery. I feel like that is not always the most common type of assignment. So I have definitely worked up to that, but I think empathy is definitely developed. And the good thing is for our courses, we get a lot of data. So I'm able to see student feedback and to see if they already are struggling with items in the course and take that information into the redesign. I think another way to approach it too is when you do offer multiple ways to show mastery, you can build in those helps to provide students with the resources that they need to be successful and the training that they might need to complete the assignment. And usually there's a one way that is relatively common. So it might be a paper along with a video and something else, where if in the case that the student is not comfortable with media, they can always still submit the paper. So I think it's finding a balance of what the students may be comfortable with, what would be appropriate for assessment, and also giving them the opportunity to be creative with their submission.
Um, then with that, so if they have multiple ways to show mastery, then and there's been a ton of new tools that have come out since AI has been around for a long time, but it's always been around for the folks on the back end, the computer engineers, computer scientists, those folks were there, but now it is everywhere for those of us on the front end as well. So have you seen what's been your experience with the influx of these tools? What are some of your favorite tools too? Do you even like working with AI?
I do. I think it is a good tool and a good resource. I think that there's also I would say I have a healthy level of knowing when to use it and when not to use it. So that has been something that I've kind of been dealing with as well. But I think it's a really good tool, and the more tools that become available, I think that they can really be beneficial for students to use in appropriate manners. Um, there's
In an
always that
appropriate way.
caveat. But I do really like a couple of them, depending on what I'm trying to do as well. Chat GPT is a good one. I use Bard also sometimes, which is Google's text generator, I think. I've been checking out the Bing one recently as well, the Bing chat. I know that one is connected to the internet, so it's a little more recent.
That's the thing that's a great point that you bring up, because if you said knowing when to use it. If you don't know when to use it, you're going to be eating some of grandma's ham, because they're built off of large language models, and like Chat GPT and such. Those aren't uh, connected directly to the internet. I think it was 2021 is where the
Mhm.
brain for that one stops. So it has everything behind that. So you have to really know when to use it, like you said. So what advice would you give a new ID just kind of breaking in and looking at these AI tools? When is the right time to use it?
I think it depends a little bit on what you're hoping to get out of it. If you're using it for ID related work, like maybe drafting out some ideas for an assignment or drafting out, any activity that you're wanting to put into the course, I think it can be really good in those instances to spark creativity or give you ideas. I've seen it be used in a few different ways for case studies or simulation type activities as well. And I think that those can be really helpful. Um, but on the other hand, if one other way that you might want to try to use it is actually put it into an assignment and allow students to use it. And in those cases, I think there's a really interesting dynamic that IDs have to deal with in the case that students are not familiar with AI at all. And depending on what you're asking them to do, again, it might actually be a barrier for them if they don't know how to use it correctly, or you're not very explicit with what you're wanting them to prompt it to do. I think that is also half the battle, just figuring out how to write prompts so that it returns the information that you want.
Right, right. It's a very iterative process, as we like to say. Yeah, because you're if even with a well-written prompt, you may not get what you expect that first time around. So you
Yeah.
have to go back and kind of troubleshoot a little bit, huh?
Yeah. And that might be tough for students, especially if it's, I've heard of AI, but I've never even opened Bard before. So if that's the case, I could see it being a real challenge and frustrating if whatever you're asking them to use it for doesn't come at the first try or the second try even.
Well, that's so cool. So then, since let's say you built an assignment with AI in it, so AI these days is really a part of digital literacy. So you
Mhm.
have to go in and train people how to use it so they can complete the assignment. So that part really would come from you rather than the SME on how to use the technology. Because if we graduate folks out that don't know how to use any of it, then more and more is that natural expectation of a lot of jobs that they
Yeah.
can use it in a positive way. So that's kind of cool. So we have all the content from the SMEs, but we have to be very cognizant of when we have to do some training, such as how to write a good prompt, how to use this tool, things like that.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, how fast AI really became available to the public. Who knows where we'll be in a year? So the training could become obsolete pretty fast. So I think that's also a challenge that we're gonna have to jump through.
The days of the evergreen course may be gone.
Yeah.
Maybe ever watering courses.
Yeah. Seems like it.
Ah, so that as an ID, you have to take all of this that we just talked about, and to create that content, you you have to make sure it's connected to all the theories and strategies so it actually sticks, right? So
Mhm.
what's the Kenna Miller secret to doing that?
Oh gosh, I'm still trying to figure that one out. I think it depends on I think it really does come down a lot of times to what you're asking students to use it for. Um, if it is something where you're expecting a certain result, I don't think that is probably I don't think it's going to stick as much as you want. But if you're giving students the space to explore and to try different AI tools, and one way that we've integrated it into a few courses is um, kind of just giving them the ability to check out different tools and ask them different things and then reflect on their experience as well. I know that a bunch of AI or most AI tools are changing rapidly. So it's interesting to see, okay, I tried these ones, they're not too great. These ones are pretty good. And then revisit it later potentially, and they've improved or maybe not. I don't know. Um,
Better.
but yeah, I think giving the students the space to explore, and another thing is also to investigate how AI is used in whatever their field is. I think that really connects to what you were saying about um, graduating with using AI positively and appropriately. If students are aware of how it's currently being used in their field and they study that and potentially even try using it in those ways, I think that can give them a real leg up as they enter into the career force as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, because when it first came out, there was a lot of knee-jerk reaction especially in the world of higher education. But if it's being used at work, and if we're not demonstrating, showing, teaching how to use it well and appropriately, then what are we doing?
Yeah,
What are we doing? We missed.
that is not the goal we don't want to miss. So,
No, we don't want to miss. So what would you tell? So it's an exciting time to be a designer, and
absolutely.
there's so many different ways that we can go, and designers are called by so many different terms. Trainers, ODs. There's so many different um, places that we can kind of get into. If you could give somebody breaking into the field some advice, I don't know if it would be evergreen advice, but maybe evergreen advice. What would that be? What would it be?
Oh man, there's so many things I could say, but going along with the guts idea, I would say my best advice is count to three and do it. Like you're always going to be scared to do whatever it is, but if you know, well, one, if you know that you're going to do it anyway, just count to three, rip the band-aid off and, get to work. But I think a lot of it is just finding your groove, finding your niche. And as you get more experience, you're going to get a lot better at it as well. You're going to learn things from working with all sorts of different people and on different projects. So if you're breaking into the field, count to three and do it, and just start your new project and absorb everything like a sponge, because everything is different and you're going to have takeaways from every single project you work on.
I think you just dropped some major life advice right there. And that goes well beyond tonight. That's some amazing life advice right there. Count to three, rip the band-aid off, and jump. I kind of love that. I have a new favorite saying now.
Oh, well, that's good. That is, I'd say my life motto, maybe count to three and do it. So
Count to three
happy
and
to
do it.
share.
That's awesome. So anybody looking to get into ID, count to three and do it. Just go in. And if you don't go in, if you don't just start, you're never going to start. That's the
Exactly.
hardest part. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because that's the thing, because everybody's smart enough to figure it out as long as they stay humble. Don't go in thinking they know everything. Like you said, learn like a sponge. So jump in and then adjust as you're there. Nobody's going to expect you to be the leading authority in the world,
Hmm.
right? And if they do, then
Really.
just, fake it. Let them think you are. That's awesome. Count to three and do it. Jump. Okay.
Hmm.
We're gonna have to get that. We're gonna have to get a banner made with that. I like that. We'll do one, two, three,
Sounds
go.
good. Hmm.
Well, Kenna, thank you so much for being the first podcast guest here on Hanshaw's Horizon. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to say to the IDs out there and future IDs who are listening to this?
I think we covered most of it, but thank you so much, George, for having me. It's an honor again to be your first guest, and I really enjoyed our chat today.
Well, this was awesome. Well, thank you. And I would be doing ourselves a disservice if I didn't speak about the newest program that you just
Oh,
helped to
right.
create, the Master of Science in Instructional Design and Technology, which is a competency-based program, fully accredited, of course. And that's kind of cool because you get to practice all of those skills within the classes, and you get in this case, Trey, who's a full-time faculty coach that's in there to walk with you. So what was it like to create that before we jump off? Because you were a
Oh,
big influence on that.
yeah, I think that that is one of my favorite experiences that I've ever had as an ID. I've learned so much. Again, my background was in HR, which there is a little overlap, but
There's a crossover, yeah.
yeah, but it was definitely interesting to be a part of a program that created an instructional design degree, and just learning off the content really as I created it. I feel like it was a great learning experience for me. And it was a wonderful experience to learn more about CBE because I know there aren't as many programs out there that are competency based. So that was just such a great learning experience. And I really had a great time being creative. I feel like that is our most creative program. We pulled in so many opportunities for students to be creative and to really have a lot of autonomy over their own education. You have so many options and choices in the program, and it really is every student will have their own unique and hopefully wonderful experience, especially because you are able to bring in your passions to it, which I think is not always true of traditional academic courses. So it was just an awesome experience, and I'm very grateful to have been a part of it.
Well, if anybody here wants to be a part of Kenna's amazing journey, where she was a big influence on creating that program, I'll put the link below this in the description as well. So your my final thought would be, really, when we think of an instructional designer, I'm going back again, way back when I was in a trade school, a technical school, we called it. A while back, and it was to be an aircraft electrician. And as you walked in, you saw a sign that said, a jack of all trades and master of none is better than a master of one. And that was kind of our motto there. And that's kind of how I see us as IDs, as we talk through all the stuff that you do daily and all the tools you use and everything else. Jack of all trades, master of none is better than a master of one, because you couldn't do it as a master of one here, because you're always learning, continually learning as an ID. Just creating classes, speaking with other SMEs, you're getting that high level, graduate level, undergraduate, whatever it may be, technical knowledge, anything like that. You're getting it as you're creating these courses. That's kind of cool.
Absolutely. Always learning something new.
Always something new. Well, thanks, Kenna. Appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, George.